Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back for another episode of Off the Comma, and we are here again to learn and listen and to appreciate each other. And we have another powerful storyteller to add to our collection of powerful storytellers this week. And we're going to get to hear and learn about her through her story this week. I'm very excited because just like so many of my guests, Kendall and I have not met before, and we're going to be kind of meeting for the first time during our conversation today. And I'm going to get to learn a lot about her through her story and her experience. And this has really been something that I'm very grateful for and very privileged to be able to do through the work of this podcast, now coming up on 3 years. So I'm going to stop rambling. Kendall, it's your story today. It's your episode today. I'm going to hand it over to you for, let's start with introductions before we get to the questions here in a few minutes. Start with, Kendall, how would you like to be known? How would you describe yourself as a person? And then you can share anything else you want to share.
Yeah, so I always love this question. When I'm in job interviews and they say like the one word, I usually say 42 because if you
Mm.
get it, you really get it. And if you don't, they look it up and think I'm clever. But now I like to describe myself as mom. And I know a lot of moms out there like it's not supposed to be your whole identity. And I was like, yes, it is. I love what it's kind of given me because my journey of motherhood has really been a part of my mental health advocacy. And
Mm.
so I have been able to advocate louder because I pushed myself to become a mother through everything.
Mm.
And then with that, I get the fun title of author now.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, yeah, mega mom, capital letter mom.
Okay, nice. What would so obviously we're going to hear a lot about that today as well. What would be some adjectives you might use to describe yourself? Like, what are some of your traits or characteristics in addition to what you've shared?
Oh, talkative. So talkative. Um, Community, like open-hearted. So I'm open book. I love to share things with people. I always make sure to ask people when they're telling a story. I was like, do you want a comparable story back, or do you just need to talk for me to listen? Because I find
Mm,
that shared experience is really how I build too. So I want people to feel like heard and relatable. And so I would say creative. So I'm very extroverted. Part of that is the outgoing, high functioning depression, but the
mm,
good thing it gave me is being really like vivid. And so I like being really myself now. Uh, I,
mm.
I'm glad that now I'm able to say authentic because for so long mental health kind of makes you be this people pleasing version, but I feel like I'm in my authentic era.
Nice. Well, and so many things that are so descriptive and powerful words, and the one that really kind of sparked for me was vivid. What a colorful and very expressive word to use to describe yourself. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing how some of these traits kind of show up and present themselves in your story today. Before we get to the 5 questions, there's one other question I have for every guest as we get started. Kendall, as you think ahead to the next like 35, 40 minutes or so of telling your story, what would what would your intention be for yourself today?
Yeah, the thing I love about talking to people and when I was listening to your podcast is it's almost like therapeutic.
Mm,
So I know the questions you're kind of gonna ask, but you never know once you start vibing like what's gonna come out. And I was talking to someone the other day and it ended and I was like, that did not go where I thought it was gonna go. And I feel like I just ran a marathon or something in a good way.
mm.
And so I'm just excited to know what I kind of came in and like pitched you almost to talk about, but knowing that in a safe space when you have empathy and understanding that it just can be opening for both of us.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And first of all, and my intention is to support you in that. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And it reminds me too that, when this podcast idea kind of was birthed and started to formulate, obviously it was about, the benefits to the listeners and being able to be inspired by other people who tell their stories and so forth. And I underestimated until into the interviews the value that it has on the guests themselves, the storytellers themselves. And so I love that you kind of remind folks who are listening that we can all make agreements with each other about being able to share the story, and I just need somebody to listen, and being able to talk it out is going to have so many benefits to me. So my intention is that there will be people out there who hear your story and they see a little bit of themselves in you and your story. They will feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone, and in the best of cases maybe even feel inspired or empowered to go out and do something they've been wanting to do. So
And that's
that's
been my journey. I asked my husband at one point, I said, "Are you okay with I'm sharing a lot of our lives out there." And he goes, "How did you feel when you were in it?" And like I couldn't understand what you were going through and you were like Googling people to connect with and you couldn't find anyone. And I said,
mm,
miserable. And he goes, "So now someone's gonna find you." And it was kind of that like permission to be authentic there. And say, "You're right.
hmm.
Okay, I got to go tell the story because someone might be up at 2 a.m. feeling alone."
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Well, then let's get into your story. So let's jump in. First question, Kendall, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
So I've thought about this like so much because we booked like a long time ago, and it's where the story is. When you talk about like sitting on a comma, and it was like when you want and need change, and I think it's interesting because mine is almost like I didn't know I was sitting on a comma. Um,
Mm,
I I loved my career. Before we had my daughter, I was like, my job was my life. I was so proud of it. I was so happy in work. And I was like a department of one to myself. And I was good at it. And every time I'd go on vacation and stuff, and you come back and you get like employees who are like, "Oh, thank God you're back." And you're like, job security, like no one wants to do what I do. And and they love me
mm,
here and I'm doing so well. Um, and then I decided, we had been going through our own personal stuff with kind of kids and fostering and things. And so I decided to have my own kid along with all the mental health stuff I was going through. And so I knew postpartum depression was going to hit me because I had normal depression. And so I had gone to HR because I didn't know, like, how does maternity leave work and how does all this
mm,
work? And we got it pretty set up. But then COVID happened. So
mm,
we were all home anyways. And so I didn't realize some of those kind of pitfalls of work. And we got back to it, and the structure of the job had changed because after COVID, when we went back, kind of my role kind of stayed with what it looked like in COVID, and it was great. And so we ended up having our second child because I knew, the first one I had my struggles. And I said, if we want more than one, I have to go right away. I have to just
mm,
not wait.
mhm,
Mentally, I'm not going to have it get better and go back into chaos. And our second child, he was so much easier because the first one, everything was new. Um, and I didn't know, I didn't want to change, I didn't need to change. Uh, but when I tried to take maternity work and it wasn't like COVID was what we were going through, um, the organization really kind of revealed different colors.
mm,
And it was really hard to advocate for my maternity leave, to advocate for my mental health needs, and to feel like safe environment. And so I really had to sit there and look and I was so confused because I was like, I love this job. This is not how I expected this to go. And I had to look at, the environment that it was in and sit down and I told my husband, like, in a sense, I was like, I'm sitting on something here and I can't do this. I need to leave this job. I need to leave this organization. Even if it gets better because HR is involved, it's not going to get better because that's their mentality now.
mm,
And so I had to figure out, I had just went through two children and postpartum depression. And I was like, I don't want to go through that again because of a career. And so how to get myself moving towards, I made such success in coming out of PPD that I wasn't going to let my career stall that. And I wasn't gonna, I
Mm.
guess, sit on the comma there and say I'm going back into depression because this workplace. So I left, and it was like soul crushing because I'm a very doing person. My job made me feel like Macy's Santa. I was like connected with families, and I loved my families. And I had to tell them I was leaving. It was heartbreaking. So I became a stay-at-home mom, and I couldn't convince myself to then like go back and look for a job for a long time. I was like, I'm
Mm.
happy with my kids. I'm happy at home. I kind of shifted to being stay-at-home mom world. Now eventually now I do have a full-time job, and it's different. It is, admittedly. It was different to have to kind of get off that role and kind of shift
Mm.
and
Well,
empower myself.
if I may reflect a couple of things back, and then obviously any place where I misreflect, correct me
Yeah.
and redirect me. There's a number of things you described in this comma moment and experience, right? Like the decisions to start and build the family, which already comes with a whole lot of just monumental work and decisions and choices and so forth. So you're carrying that, and then you successfully have your first child, and then you make another decision, and it's like, okay, because of my mental health and because of my needs and the needs of our family, let's go ahead and have our second child so that we can kind of like combine the work, I guess, is maybe one way of putting it, right? Like let's make all this happen together and maximize the time that I'm already kind of setting aside to do this work, right? And then while you're planning your family and you're planning your future, then this challenge comes up with work, and is work going to be supportive the second time? And then what I believe I'm hearing, all of that is challenging, but then what I believe I'm hearing is it forced a decision that you really weren't excited about making because you really loved the job. And I believe I heard disappointment on many levels, disappointment that they reacted the way they did, and then disappointment that you would have to walk away from something that you loved. Is That's a lot. I rambled, but are any parts of
No,
that
I
like?
mean that's it. I think it's what a lot of us face, and my husband and I, we knew how lucky we were. Not, and it's so horrible to say because like COVID was a traumatic thing, but it gave us the ability to be there all the time to watch our
Mhm.
daughter grow up. And we knew that the jobs we had slightly before, we would be out at work and we'd be doing that. And so many parents do that. And when I was doing like PPD during it, I thought I was being like supported at work to kind of take pauses during the day and kind of take pauses for pumping and nursing and being there. But in reality, it wasn't. It was COVID allowed that because we were
Mm.
home and we were virtual. And so that was the eye-opening shift, is that when COVID rules were sort of over and you had to go back into the workplace with our second one, I found out that maternity leave was like, it's kind of like a farce. I was like, oh
Mm.
yeah, you're gonna call it maternity leave. But it wasn't. And I couldn't I was like, well, I thought I had accommodations and stuff, and it wasn't.
Mm.
And so I was just like, this is sadly what a lot of families face too. And kind of having it hit me was like, I didn't expect it.
Well, and I think you just clarified something for me that I might have missed, is the first time that you were on maternity leave was during COVID.
Yeah.
So, and then the second time was after COVID. So, what you thought maternity leave was going to be was was not consistent with what it was. And I want to be careful what I say here, because different companies, different policies, different experiences and so forth, right? But like COVID really sort of enabled and almost enforced what maternity leave is meant to be, right? Time
Yeah.
home, time away from work and so forth. But then you got to see kind of the real friction and rub in a true work environment with a non-pandemic related maternity leave request, right?
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
woes of HR, right? Like we had stuff in place because I knew how hard the first was for me. And so I went to HR to kind of do my, hey, I'm gonna start to be out. Like obviously I'm pregnant. And it was, I'm gonna start to be out. Can we get my maternity leave set up? And I had brought up like, I guess call them my pain points. I said, here's the things I want to look at. Um, You guys didn't have a pumping room. uh, I was sitting on the floor of a bathroom. Like, we didn't have, here's how my schedule works and things. And unfortunately, bosses, so I said there were some comments made in the last maternity leave that, I didn't come to you for because we were home at COVID and I can kind of stay out. But if I have to come to the office and have those things said to me, like, I don't want to come. Uh,
Mm,
and unfortunately, it's like when you go to HR and you're like, yeah, they're supposed to be there, but all they're really going to do is say, you shouldn't say that.
mm,
And nothing's going to change. And I think that was the shift. It's like, well, they can say, yeah, that's wrong, but nothing is going to kind of move from an action to like emotion and all of
mm,
those pieces. And I was just like, oh no, I'm out. Like if it's
yeah.
between you and my family, like you're gonna lose every time. And unfortunately I had the ability to say that. And then my heart kind of breaks because other coworkers who are like they I was lucky enough at that time that my husband could help kind of make up that deficit of me not having a job, but we had to also look at it like the reality of what does it mean in the shift to stay in this job.
Hmm. Let me jump in because with a second question, I should say. You've really kind of set the stage for us, kind of what led up to the comma moment and what it was like to be sitting in that moment. This next question is an invitation to continue to expand on the story, go backwards if you want, even if you want to start kind of taking us forward into what happened next. But the second question is, what did it create for you? What did sitting on this comma create for you?
I think kind of empowerment. So when it first started getting bad, I mean, there was definitely the frustration of like, we all say like, oh, I don't want to go to work today. But it was kind of being able to sit and really look at it and say like, no, I'm not just complaining about a work schedule or frustrations. Like I'm complaining about something that to my core in the mental health advocacy is like, no, like we don't talk mental health enough. And there are aspects of maternity leave, there's aspects of even just being not even a mom, like a person. Like I
Hmm.
I clearly can't go to my superiors and say, I'm really great at my job. And here is how I just need help and support to continue being great at my job. I've never kind of gone under the 40 hours. I've always gone over, like, I've never shirked my work or anything. So just seeing that difficulty of a workplace kind of getting their mind around like helping people and having kind of heart for their employees. And it really shifted from like, that team feeling to I'm just a person at a table. And like
Hmm.
it didn't matter to you that I've been here for 4 years. Like any accomplishments that I've done kind of are you can't meet me where I am right now. And so that it ended up being like it was a heartbreaking decision, but it was probably the easiest decision I've ever made. Like I told my
Mm.
husband, I'm not gonna go. I did a job where I was helping to like grow and bring people in and talk about the organization and say how great. And I was like, I can't morally do that if I don't think this is how I feel anymore. And I certainly can't like work with families and sell them on something I don't believe in. It was a
Mhm.
very easy decision. But then it was a lot of like internal confusion because I've worked since I was like 14. My brother played baseball and I started like a baseball stand to help parents and do like event planning for them. And I've always just been really I've enjoyed kind of creating for the world. And so being home, it was great being with like just my kids, but I had to shift that energy. So I had like moms I was going out with to the library and I was making little like stay at home mom play dates and groups and things. And so I kind of just shifted my gears to something I was more passionate about. And
Mhm.
so I knew that, but I also knew it in some respect. I was like, I'm going to have a void because I like having a career in a sense of like program planning for someone. And so, and then we also knew like the kids were going to eventually have to go to school and do their thing. And so, how do I kind of fill that? And that's why I went back to work eventually. But it was a really big identity hit to say, when you don't, in a sense, I got to make the choice myself, but I didn't.
I hear a couple of things too, just kind of. reflecting back some of the things you shared. One was, back to that sense of disappointment again. You clarify about how, like, you were really great at your job, and it seems like there's kind of a sense of surprise there. Like, if this is how you treat someone who's really good at their job, how must you treat someone who's average or normal, right? Like, so there's no real like barometer for what constitutes, how you're going to be treated fairly. It just seems like it was an eye opening, in that experience, it seems.
And that's that saying, like, we never leave our jobs for the job. We leave as
Mm,
management. And I was like, yeah,
hmm.
sadly.
Yeah. Before we go on to our remaining three questions, an invitation to kind of expand here, however you're comfortable talking about it. You mentioned a couple of times the postpartum depression, and then on top of having already had a relationship with depression, I think for people who are out there listening, since you stated that was part of your intention, right? For people who are listening, particularly women who are listening, what would you want to say or add into your story about how the depression was a part of the story? What was the relationship with depression beyond what you've already shared?
I think like my hope is just the world understanding, like, give grace and space. So, so much in postpartum depression, I think specifically, is what we see is, you just had this brand new baby and you're supposed to be happy all the time. Like, yay, I had a baby, it came out, it's healthy, it's there. But our hormones shift, our hormones change, your identity has shifted because you have to be or feel like you have to be on 24/7. And so in postpartum depression, it's even harder because you want to say there are moments where you're not okay. And you really just want to hear someone say back, it's okay to not be okay. But most
Hmm.
people don't say that. They say, what do you mean you're not okay? Look how cute your little daughter is. Or like, we had had a horrible miscarriage before our daughter. So a lot of the times I heard, but you had one. And I was like, that
Mm,
doesn't make it better. Like, I would have been depressed with the first one too. And then what
hmm.
would you have said? And so I think it was, I knew postpartum depression was gonna come. And I had prepared really well with family and friends to say, like, please never give me a silver lining. When I'm in that moment, just sit with me and say, yes, this is the worst right now. So if I am
Hmm.
randomly crying, and it happened a lot where I was like, I don't know why I'm crying. It just kind of, well, my cloud analogy is a cloud rolled in. And that's where the book came from, was explaining to people that just a cloud is rolling in and it's making me really shady. And I understand fully that the world is sunny everywhere else, but around me, and I had a cloud pillow, it was a visual, and I would just show and be like, right here, it is shady. Let me sit in something is really different. And it does not mean that I don't love my kids to the fullest. It just means in this moment, I'm experiencing a lot of different emotions at once. And
Hmm.
I think that was definitely the problem in the work shift, was like, if I if I needed a pause, there's no ability to just pause and say, hey, I just need, I'm still gonna do my 8 hour day. I just need like a half an hour to go over here and do this. And we don't have that built into a lot of
Hmm.
systems, unfortunately. To just
Hmm.
say, here's like a mental health moment. Here's a pause to go take a walk or do this. And it feels like you have to jump through so many hoops to advocate for that. And so we aren't built for that professional helping people. We want to say like we're problem solvers for tasks and duties and responsibilities, but how do we get to that core of like just the human kindness in that sense?
Hmm. You call attention to a couple of things that, I just want to acknowledge that is, one, the systems that we live in, particularly here in the West and the United States, they're really not built for humans having autonomy to be able to take what they need. Like, the systems are built for ongoing production, not there some roles obviously are different, but it's not the outcomes and the outputs, it's the production itself, right? So there's not a lot of time for people who need to take a moment or take a break to be able to do that. But you call attention to something that's kind of important to me, that so I'll self-reference for a moment. I learned about this in coaching. I've kind of now looked back on my life and say, yes, I can see the importance of this, but that just because I, as an observer of your experience, I see something that makes me uncomfortable and that I don't want for myself, doesn't mean that I need to fix it for you. So, like, you're calling attention to sometimes when people are experiencing something that maybe is undesirable to yourself, they're not asking you to fix it. They're not asking for help. They're asking for acknowledgement, validation, and just basically say, yeah, I see you, right? Uh, what would you add to that? What would you change about that? I just like that's one of the
No,
things I want to model in this podcast, and I believe we have been doing over these years is like let people tell their story. We don't have to fix it, change it, course correct it, comment on it, add to it. Sometimes people just want to be recognized, right?
it's a learning curve. Even for myself, because I am a storyteller and I love talking, and I find for me comfort is if I'm telling a story and I say, I had a hard day, I stubbed my toe, and you say, oh, I stubbed my toe yesterday too, then for me, I'm like, okay, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I can continue the story and share and not feel like, oh, you're going to think I'm crazy because stubbed toes don't hurt or something like small like that. So my natural go to is when someone shares something, I share back. And I've
Mm-hmm.
found that not everyone wants that. So I've really learned and have tried to practice and model when someone shares, and I've taught my husband this for me as well, is we do check-ins. So when someone
Mm-hmm.
starts sharing, I kind of pause and say, do you want me to relate to you? Do you want me to share back? Or are you just telling me because you need to talk? And I tell them I have to ask this because I want to know like where you are. And sometimes like I'll even tell my husband, I'll be like, I don't know, hit me with both and I'll see which one I respond to better. And so we do. But I've learned to say that with friends a lot too, where I was like, listen, my natural instinct is I'm going to tell you a story back, but I need you to tell me if you just want to keep venting without me sharing. And I think it's being okay to have those conversations with people because I've certainly lost friends because they like the ADHD side of me that like jumps in and excitedly like shares back. There's like, no, I didn't want you to share back, and that's rude. And I'm like, I didn't mean it to be rude. I meant it because
Mm-hmm.
that's how I connect with people, and so that's what I
Mm-hmm.
try. So it's where I kind of succeed is the ability to kind of pause and reflect and say, what do you need? And then
Mm-hmm.
I need kind of that people understanding that's why I'm asking because I'm really asking from a place of trying to help their like how I'm going to impact them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much to say there, right? But I'm definitely recognizing what you're saying is it's spoken as you, right? I am a feeler. I am in touch with my feelings. I understand and recognize feelings in others, and it's hard sometimes because I want to share in whatever ways that I can, and yet sometimes it's important that I honor that other people might want different things, and so I'm able to shift and to check in first, as you said. Kendall, all of this has clearly had a big impact on your life. Let me shift to the third question. Again, you can always continue to go back and expand however much you want to. What have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
Um, as I'm gonna like steal quotes from my own book because it is quotes from our life. That it's all been like a part of me and not all of me. So I think everything that we've went through I had taken so heavy as like something I've done wrong or some kind of like feeling broken. um but being able to shift it, so when I left my job and I went through like, what does this mean now? How do I kind of empower myself? I shifted to like mental health advocacy, and I wrote my children's book based on talking to my kids about having a cloudy day and it's okay to not be okay. And so I was able to see that anything I was going through doesn't define like who I was. and I can't go out there and advocate for talking about mental health and talking about struggles. And so it has shown me like this stronger version of myself because I'm like, yeah, it losing your career was a big hit, but it was probably one of the strongest things I've done for myself to say it's not worth sitting in this environment for
Mm.
me. And it's not, what it was worth to me was like paycheck versus like emotional mental health. And so it showed me kind of what I can kind of build and do for
Mm.
not only myself, but again, like this, like, let's go have the conversation. Because again, there's probably someone in a job right now that can't make that choice, but they're like, yeah, I'm going through kind of the same emotional hurt. And so, how do you talk about that? How do you give them confidence and kind of, as you say, create movement to,
Mm.
you know, not sit on the comma?
Mm. Well, as you've talked, I, like so many people, have my own relationship with, feelings and depression and mental health and so forth. And I don't know that I have any specific labels that I use for it. I think everybody experiences it to some degree or another on a spectrum of experience, right? Um, and I think again, back to this whole like fixing and have to have a positive attitude mindset in our society is like, oh, you can't sit there. People will make assumptions. It's like, oh, you're wallowing or why would you choose to just sit there in that and whatever. And it's like, well, that's not it. And that's not what folks are saying. It's that right now this is how I feel, and I trust myself to be able to get to where I want to go. Whether that's I will get happy in a few minutes, or I will get mad in a few minutes, or I will get productive in a couple of days. Like whatever that is, I will trust myself to get there. Right now, I need to kind of experience this. I need to sit in this for a moment. There could be something important for me to learn. It could be an important moment of pause for me to process and experience something that really is needing some attention. Or, quite frankly, sometimes I just fucking want to sit and feel this way for God's sake, right? But I think the presumption on some people's part, and sometimes my own, when I'm sitting, I call it sitting in my dirty diaper, right? Um, that, which funny that metaphor would come up, right? Sometimes even I like I'm not going to just stay in one place. I'm incapable of staying in one mood all the time, right? And again, I know everybody has their own different experience with that kind of relationship with, their mental health and their mental experiences. But so many people, I'll finish and then we'll go back to you, is I think so many people either they're uncomfortable with it themselves or societal expectations. You have to be happy, you have to be sunny. Like they want to move you along, and often with good intentions, but it's just not good alignment.
That's the like should, would, could. So yeah, I should be happy. And if I could, I would.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't. And so you said something that was like, people ask me why a cloud. And I was like, because my feelings move with me everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And clouds look different all the time. And so that was a big part of it is um so in my kids book it's like we're on a beach and the key point was like mom doesn't stay home because she was fine at home. They went to the beach, it hit. And what's that responsibility to fix myself? So my
Mm-hmm.
kids, they're still kids in the book. So they have moments of like, Mom, do you want to come play? But my kids have learned not to try and fix me because they know mom's not going to be able to play. But there's a delicate balance of what a kid is still going to do. They're still going to try to include you.
Mm-hmm.
But I've taught them like how to include me in a way that is also good for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the book, it's not, they're not trying to fix mom, but they do invite her to play and they decide, okay, mom, well, you need to lay down. So we're going to build a mermaid tail over you. And that's not my
Mm-hmm.
kids being responsible for my feelings. It's my kids knowing mom doesn't have the energy to do anything else. So let's play where she's at. And I think that's what my balance has been is I can't hide my mental health from my kids. I mean, I can. I don't want to. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
go to another room. I don't want to say, leave mom alone to sit on the couch. It is very much like, well, mom just needs a minute on the couch. If you guys want to bring a book over here and cuddle with me, I will be included over here. If you really want to
Mm-hmm.
go play horsies, mom can't right now. Please go play horsey in another room. So it's shifting the learning from being something to fix. I should be happy to just, okay, you're not happy, so how do we include you? And
Mm-hmm.
that is what I tried to show. And, as I was kind of, we just launched, and so I've been kind of getting those
Mm.
comments and feedbacks. And a lot of the concern is, well, you keep saying the kids aren't fixing, but they are doing a lot for mom in the book. And I was like, but look at what they're doing. They're not asking mom to do anything she can't do. They're asking mom to be where she's at. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that has been amazing in my family to see. And that was why I left the job, because I'm like, man, my 2 year old can meet me where I'm at and
Mm-hmm.
you can't. And you're supposed to be empowering your team for the
Mm-hmm.
last 4 years. And so that was kind of my shift in my role. Is a lot of the market, when I tried to traditionally publish, they pushed back and they were like, this is too heavy for kids and we should only be doing like happy stuff right now. And I was like, you have to have confidence in our children, because my daughter was 2 when she helped me write half of this. and
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
if you teach them the possibility of like, hey, mom was sitting on her comma stuck in this job, and I was like, I'm not going to meet them where they're at, I'm going to meet them where I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they know I left. She knows I left my job,
Mm-hmm.
and it was why. And it was like, because mom needed help and it wasn't there,
Right.
and you can have those conversations.
You surprisingly, you this whole conversation brings up memories of me and my relationship with my mother, who my mother had severe depression and had to take a lot of medications and so forth. I think the difference and distinction, because I did unfortunately assume responsibility for my mother's mental health at a very young age and all the way up until the point she passed away, quite frankly. um
Parentified, right?
what's that?
The parentified. You're the parent of
Yes.
your parent.
Yes. And yet the distinctions that I think I call attention to, and I won't dwell here too much because it's your story today, but to support and reinforce the comments you're making and the content that you wrote about with my mother, and obviously this was complex and complicated, but it was always very clear that there was an expectation that I would make her feel better, that I would make her happy, right? Now, the difference between the relationship with my mother and what I'm hearing you describe is that my mother assumed and expected that I would fix things and that I would take care of things and I would make things better for her. Whether it was I need to make mama happy, or whether it was, I have to entertain mama so that she'll get in a better mood, or whether it was the simple things like she's having, a mental health moment and is completely unfunctional. So guess what? I have to go in the kitchen and clean and cook and things because she wouldn't. And there's more and more and more. And I'm not saying this to demonize my mother, because my mother had her demons, right? She had her own relationship with mental health. But unfortunately, the dynamic that ended up not working in our relationship was I had to assume the responsibility, sometimes just in order to make my own life work and function. And she was perfectly okay with that. My mother definitely demanded and commanded a lot of attention. And she liked the attention she got when she was not at her happiest moments. And if she wasn't getting enough attention, then she would do things to get the attention. So that's a very different story, isn't it?
No, it's very similar. I think, and that's where all of this kind of hit for me when I had originally like told my husband like I didn't want children, because I was like, how do you walk that fine line? I am a very parentified child.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was not there for my mom in that sense. Like if my mom was having kind of a depressive episode, my dad was go cheer your mom up, go do this for your mom, go do this. And I never saw it as a family partnership because dad was not going in and doing it. I was responsible for my mom. And when I kind of got into like my teens and upper, it was like, well, I have my own emotions. But my
Mm.
mom's came first, and then I was like, oh, so it was just always feeling responsible. Like I have to watch what I say because mom's feelings are gonna get hurt and stuff. And it's sad to say, I like, and my mom is super supportive. Like we still have a really great relationship. I'm just aware like that's what we had to do when we were younger, and it wasn't until I was older and able to talk it out with my mom and say I felt responsible for a lot of this. And I would have, like, now I do it because it's my choice to say, Mom, I want to be there. Like, let's talk. I'll call her and say, how are you doing? And it is my choice now as an adult to say, Mom,
Mm-hmm.
I want to be there for you. And we talk about mental health. But when we grew up, it wasn't framed like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really hard to have that conversation with my family and go through it. Now, unfortunately, like, kind of split me and my dad. Um, so I was like, how do I deal with this with my daughter? And so my husband and I do walk the fine line because our kids are very empathetic. And so it's never their responsibility to be there for me. The other day I had a doctor call about health stuff and it kind of just threw me into like a whole spiral. So I was crying. So obviously the family comes and they hug you. But I made sure it was known like mom's just having a hard day, you guys don't have to sit here. You can keep going and playing. And so it gives them that choice where, like, my daughter asked, like, I'm going to come check on you. And I said, that's okay. And so I told my husband, like, all I want to do the rest of the day is, like, veg out on the couch. Like, I don't have the capacity to do anything else. And so, same thing, like, he had talked to the kids. He was like, Mom's going to hang out here, we could go play. And then he said, we could do something. Like, do you want to make art for her or something to keep them entertained? But it's
Mm-hmm.
in this way of letting them know, like, they don't have to. Like, dad and I will take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you want to sit here with mom and read books with her, mom would love that. But otherwise, she's okay here. I will be with mom. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's how we try to approach it because we know our kids are so kind that they're not going to want to leave me to hurt on my own when I'm in the middle of it. And they also know things that are like going to make me happy. Like I heard the other day my daughter whisper, she was in her room with her brother and she goes, they were coloring together. And she's like, if mom walks by, she's going to love this. And so she
Mm.
knows if I saw them doing it, I was going to be like, and so I did walk by. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, I do love it. So she knows there are things that cheer me up because we have talked about them. They said, what happens if you get really sad? What would cheer you up? And I said, I love your hugs. You don't have to, but I do love them.
Mm-hmm.
So we've learned to kind of make sure they know you're not responsible. We'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're here, we can do it together. And so I think that's been for me the defining difference in that I was never given the choice as a child. It was
Mm-hmm.
that's your parent, go do it. I'm your dad, I told you so. And so you do it. And so it takes that kind of identity out of you being a kid to being you are responsible. And so that's what I'm trying to kind of strike the balance with.
Yeah. One more kind of reflection, and then I'll jump into the fourth question. It seems like now that I'm kind of zooming out and looking at this whole story that you've told, and even kind of thrown in some of my pieces into the mix, it seems like, you tell me if I'm off base here, like you are also kind of representing this bridge between generations in your family. Like as you've come to this place, you've been able to empathize with the mother and the upbringing that you had, while also learning from and trying to create different experiences in order to empathize with your children who represent the child that you were.
Yeah. And I think this is probably the first time I'll get like deeper. So that's exciting for me. I said, I think you asked me what I get out of podcasting. I was like therapy, but
Mm,
it's that generation gap of my grandparents. That generation was like the very straightforward, strict, like boys are this way and boys are tough and like
mhm,
this is what you do. And they were harsher. My grandfather was very harsh, like verbally, and you get spanked and stuff. And so my parents grew up with a very harsh mentality of their parents' generation. So when they are a little bit different, they think, well, you have it so great because my father spanked me and I never spanked you and stuff. And I'm like that kind of shift. And so I'm like, okay, that doesn't make it great. My parents' generation never talked mental health. I asked to go to therapy a lot when I was in high school and stuff. I knew that my depression what was different than what was going on in school and what I was dealing with and coming home with. But we didn't do that. You don't talk about it. It's you're fine. Suck it up. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
that bad. People have it worse. The starving kids in Africa comments. Like it's always worse. And so it's like our generation now, my goal is to say you can like other people do have it worse, other people have deeper levels of depression from me, but that does not invalidate that for
Mm.
me this is the worst. And so that is really what I see as the I've had to put a lot of boundaries in my relationships. I have a lot of chosen family because it was the boundary to say just because you are doing better than what came before you does not mean you are doing the best you can do. And unless you
Mm.
push yourself to be open with doing the best, um, then it's not going to be there. And one time my dad and I kind of had it out, and he this is like the teenage angst, and he kind of said, I can't wait till you have kids one day and they give you like I hate you. And I was like, actually, like I want them to, like, because when my daughter says it, I think I'm gonna pause and say, like, oh man, what am I doing to shift to hate right now? And the
Mm.
fact that my parents will never stop and ask me that is that generational gap of like we're in this generation where we will stop and ask the questions to create movement and change. And the generation before us is like, just be happy that's not as bad as it could be. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the line, I think you should go above the line. Like the bar was set
Mm-hmm.
here, you could go above it, but just kind of coming up to it is not a change.
Yeah. Well, and that key word right there, like let's jump into the fourth question then. I feel like you've already kind of shared a fair amount about this, but what would you add? What has changed for you as a result of sitting on that comma?
Um, Authenticity. So like with my cloudy days, being able to text friends and like I had plans yesterday and I texted a friend in the morning and I was like, I'm having a very cloudy day. Could I let you know by noon if I could still hang out? And like just being able to say that instead of making some excuse like the kids are sick and then jinxing myself and being like, oh no, hopefully now they
Mm.
don't get it. So it's been authenticity. It's been a lot of like moving to action. So, I'm not just going to say that we need to like talk about boundaries. We need to talk about mental health. I'm really putting it out there. I'm podcasting. I'm working with mental health organizations. I'm doing support groups and kind of trying to use the book not as like a here's a book please buy it because we've donated so many copies because we're trying to create this language shift where we do talk about it's okay to not be okay. And
Mm-hmm.
if we start small because we start with our children and we have to wait for them to grow up and change the world because we're dealing with everything we're dealing with now, it's just how do you put these possibilities out there that it's okay to talk about mental health, that it's okay to talk about the bad days and do it in a way where I saw something and I loved it because it was like don't have a good day, don't have a bad day, just have a day. Like don't
Mm.
worry about it. Just go have your day and make the most of it. And I think that's where we are a lot in society. Like things are so defined. And I grew up on that foundation and I try and break that mentality, but it's hard to break because it's so long
Mm.
grounded in everything. And so it's been great where I've changed is to try to finally allow myself to not so easily bucket everything and silver line it and just say,
Mm.
no, let's feel it, let's validate it, let's kind of get grounded in all of it.
It seems like there's a level of kind of like neutrality and allowing I think a lot of people who would share similar stories to yours, would talk about the fight and the resistance. Either, well, I hear a lot of these stories, right? And I've experienced it myself, where if it's the day you don't want to have the fight and the resistance, sometimes the just completely giving into it and then be succumbing to it, right? Same thing with the happy days too, right? Like, oh, like I'm so all into it, I'm jealous of it, I don't want to let it go, which is its own form of resistance against the opposite, right? But what I'm hearing you describe, where what's changed for you, is that I'll notice what day it's going to be, and I'll give space for it to be that day. And yet you're able to allow that day to happen without it having to like happen to you, right? It's happening with you, I guess, or something like that. How would you correct that?
No, I that's when someone asked me like when did I feel this shift, and I felt it because I worked in the like neurodivergent field, and there was the language of like someone is autistic, and then the language shifted to someone has autism, and I
Mm,
was like that's what we need to do for mental health is I'm not depression, I experience depression. And so I didn't have a depressive day. I had a normal day, and I had a small depressive cloud come for a little bit and
mm-hmm,
then pass. And so that was like my clouds don't last forever, is the awareness that I need to look at my days not defined as good or bad, but I had a day and I had some really great times in there and I had some really bad times in there. But the whole of the day is just a day itself.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me ask you the final question, the last of the five questions. However briefly you want to respond to this. Question five is, Kendall, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
This, it looks like saying these things and I have delightfully like seen the world resonate. And so it's been a fantastic feeling to say, whether it's like someone kind of believing in and talking to me about the book and my blog and saying, oh, I feel that way too, is that it's kind of that we have shifted enough to get off the comma and say change is wanted and needed in this way, and know that there is an audience out there, not even an audience, a collaborative community of support.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's how I see it. Like whether it's a sale or whether it's like a therapy center or a group that I'm working with, it's more than that. It's like here is a group of people now that can be like my people. And so it's that it looks like having like-minded conversations. And that's how we all get it, as you say, like get moving again. It's
Mm-hmm.
we have the conversations, we create the collaboration, we create the safe spaces to just listen and embrace everyone's ideas.
Mm, nice. Well, clearly, I mean, there's so much more to your story and your life that you could share, and so much more we could talk about. Unfortunately, podcasts have to come to an end at some point, just like books do. As an author, you know this. As we bring things to a close, two more things. First of all, for people who don't want the story to end, they want to hear more, they want to learn more, maybe follow you, see what's going on. I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes, but where can people find you?
So I made it really easy. I use the same word for all of my platforms. So cloudydaychronicles.org, Cloudy Day Chronicles Instagram, Cloudy Day Chronicles Substack, all the same word. You Google it and one thing will pop up.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, good. Those are in there in the show notes for people to click on those links. This next section is equally as important, and it's a section I call acknowledgments because this whole podcast is about, hearing people's stories, lifting up voices, normalizing conversations with everyday people like ourselves. So your story wouldn't be complete if I didn't give you the opportunity to acknowledge others. And that's your chance to boost or give a voice to or promote others, and that could be organizations, causes, other creators, or just people in your life who matter and are important. Who would you like to acknowledge today? And I'll be sure to include them in the show notes.
I mean, I have to start with my family. My husband and Alma and Max, they love watching the podcast and hearing their names. Um, So just without them, I wouldn't be mom. Um, Following on my Substack, I've had the opportunity to meet so many amazing organizations that there's too many to list, but I love writing about them. So please go check out mental health organizations, community builders, and fantastic people. But today, because the story I shared was so pivotal to like the moment I kind of quit my job and shifted, I want to give like a specific shout out happiness to my friends Ashley and Dunya because they were my stay-at-home moms during that period who really were the empowerment of like not falling apart and having someone to go to who just understood like it is a cloudy day, but we are going to meet up and it is just going to be whatever day we have. And the way they raise their children around mine, it just has been this heartwarming like togetherness of kind of clarity and who you are. So
Hmm.
to them.
Nice. Wonderful. Well, we will definitely give them some credit and some visibility in the show notes. And I just want to thank you again for being able to come here, or being willing to come here and share your story with us, open up and be vulnerable, and to join our kind of storytelling collective about life. So thank you again for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for the safe space.
Absolutely. I wish you a wonderful weekend ahead, and I will be following your journey as well. What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection, because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.